We are live. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are live. And this afternoon, here on Man Talk Live, I have a question for you. Are you a man who's been struggling and dealing with a lot of pain in your life where you are really searching for answers to the questions on why you're going through so much pain, mental and emotional? Well, this afternoon here on Real Talk, Man Talk Live, I want to share with you 5 important tips on how you can find purpose in your pain. And we're starting right now. Praise the Lord, everyone. Welcome to Man Talk Live. I'm your host, Walter Strong, where we share helpful tips to inspire men like yourself to raise the standard of manhood in your life so that you can be a great husband, a devoted father, and a man of integrity. And as we said in our opening this afternoon, I want to get into 5 important tips that's going to help you to find purpose in the pain that you're going through right now. And so if you're new here, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag team live. And if you're watching the replay episode of this discussion, do me a favor, hashtag team replay in the comment section. And so as I said, we're going to get into 5 important tips on helping you to find purpose in the pain that you're dealing with. Because as men, there are times when we can go through some very painful and difficult things in life where we're asking the question, why me? We're asking the question, why do I have to go through this at this time in my life? And when we don't have the answers that will satisfy and relieve the pain, it leaves us in a place where we feel like people don't care. We feel like we're alone and we're going through this all by ourselves. And so I want to share this episode to encourage you this morning here on Man Talk Live. So without further ado, let's get into the content. Let's have this discussion on how you can find purpose in your pain in your life as a man. We're living in some very difficult and tough times right now as men. In our lives, our nation, our country, we're seeing people experience great loss of life, loss of property, loss of resources and materials, loss of memory and cherished moments. I think about what's been going on the West Coast with the West Coast wildfires, where people's homes have been burned, property and businesses. And again, unfortunately, the loss of life through the wildfires. I think about this past year about individuals who lost homes and property and precious memories through the hurricanes and severe storms and floods. And as a result, people are going through. They're now people losing jobs through government layoffs. Businesses are closing, which have been a staple in our community for years, now closing. And as a result, the closing now where people are now out of work. And so people are going through a lot of pain, a lot of heartbreak. And so there's a lot of questions being asked, why is this happening now? And why does this have to happen to me and my family? And so when you begin to ask those questions, though that they're logical to ask, what's becoming frustrating for a lot of people is when you can't find the answers with gas prices and prices for food. And you think about the price of eggs nowadays being so high. It's causing a lot of pain. It's causing a lot of hurt and suffering. And so how do you get through this? How do you find purpose that will help you to get out of the bed and to open your eyes and to see a new day and to put your feet on the floor one more time where you don't allow discouragement and depression to beat you down? Well, tip number 1, how do you do it? You have to acknowledge the pain that you're going through. And when I talk about pain, I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about the emotional and the mental pain. Sometimes the emotional and mental pain can have us in a place where we're so discouraged, we're so disappointed, and we're so heartbroken, where we feel like we don't have the energy and the strength to be able to be encouraged to know that things are going to get better. And so we have to acknowledge when we're going through that type of pain, we have to be honest with ourselves. We can't hide from it. We can't suppress it and throw ourselves into our career and throw ourselves into our jobs. We can't throw ourselves and distract what we're going through, when clearly loved ones that really care about us, they see what we're going through, as men in particular, uh, our spouses, our mothers, our sisters, and whoever that close woman is in your life. They see that you're going through it and pain, especially when it's the type of pain and grief and loss of a loved one, a loss of a father, a loss of a child. Uh, you know, um, your son and your father is now passed away. As men, we are dealing with some painful things. As I said, the loss of income and work in your career, where you've been with a company for 10 to 20 years, only to learn now, because of the times that we're living in, companies are now going bankrupt. And as a result, they're no longer able to keep their doors open. And you're in your late 45 to 55 age demographic, and you don't know how you're going to be able to transition to the next phase in your life. And so you have to acknowledge that you're in pain, not suppress the pain, not tolerate the pain, but acknowledge the pain to those who have your best interest at hand. Most importantly, acknowledge it to God, because he knows us better than we know our own self. He knows the pain that we silently keep away from others, and we're crying out silently, asking for relief, and we're trying to find relief in very temporal and self-destructive ways, such as alcohol, addictive drugs, or pornography, when we should just turn and acknowledge him to say, help me with this. There is an old hymn that is sung in the church that goes and says, what needless pain we bear when we fail to take everything to God in prayer. Prayer should never be our last resort as men, but prayer should be our first response, crying and acknowledge to God that we are in pain. And if we see prayer, if we see going to his word is not as the last resort, but our first response, what's going to happen is, over time, we're going to find purpose from our pain. We're going to find purpose from our pain. I want you to think about, in the old days, where pictures used to be developed and made, a photographer would come, and when they were going to take a family portrait of a family, they would take the camera, set it up, and then allow the camera to take a series of pictures, and the lights would flash. And as the light flashed, it caught the image and brought it into the camera of the film. And then after that was done, the photographer or the developer, if the person was different, they would go into a place, what is called the dark room, and they would take the negatives of that film and put it in a solution that would help to develop and form the pictures that were initially taken by the photographer. Now, it's interesting that when the developer begins to develop the film, he has to wear some special types of gloves to protect his hands and the upper parts of his wrist and his arms, so that the solution that helps to develop the pictures do not get on him, on his skin or his clothes, because the solution of it is so strong that it burns, that it could damage and harm your clothes, and most importantly, harm your skin. And so that's how powerful it is. But as it stays in the solution, it begins to cause the image to come into focus. And then the pictures lifted from the negative are then hung up, and then they go through their period of drying to eventually you have a clear and beautiful pictures that you can put together with other pictures that you can then bring back to the party who took the family picture. And then ultimately, based on the package, the person makes the purchase and then buys those family photos, and then they can hang them up in their homes or get wallet-sized pictures and enjoy the memory of that time of taking that picture. What am I saying? There are sometimes that the pain that we go through emotionally and mentally can be like us being in a dark room. And we don't realize that God is developing the negative situation in our life, though it's painful, though it's dark, and we don't see our way out of the situation. But yet he's developing the negative so that way it can be a picture or pictures later on that can be enjoyed and shared with others. But it first starts with acknowledging him, not as our last resort, but as our first response. Tip number 2, not only do we have to acknowledge that we're going through the pain, but we have to acknowledge that he's the one who can heal us. And when I talk about being healed, I'm not talking about physical healing. I'm talking about being healed of a broken heart. Today, so many men in our society, in our communities, are suffering from a broken heart. So many of our men are going through and they need healing emotionally in their mind because of the mental and emotional pain that they're going through. And so going to the pharmacy and to getting an over-counter medicine like Tylenol or Advil or Aleve is not going to alleviate this type of pain that we go through as men. We have to go to God and say, Lord, I need healing from my broken heart. Because if we don't get healed of our broken hearts as men, if we don't get healed of the emotional trauma that we're going through, being damaged and hurt emotionally as men, we put up walls. And when we begin to put up walls, we begin to shut people out and keep people from coming into our lives out of fear of not being hurt or traumatized or further damaged and wounded. And sometimes these wounds can go back to even our childhood, where we have what I call father wounds. And if we're not careful as men, if we don't get healed of our father wounds, as fathers, we will take it into our relationships with our own children and cause more father wounds to them because we refuse to get healed. And so if you're going to find purpose from your pain, you have to be healed. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live this afternoon, do me a favor, click that thumbs up button for me. Share this on your favorite social media platform that you're on watching the most, and encourage another man that prayer, trusting God to heal him, is not a last resort, but it's a first response. Let's continue. So if you're going to find purpose from the pain that you're dealing with in your life, you have to acknowledge that you need God. You need to acknowledge you need healing. And as you get healed, you have to be willing to share your story. of how you've been healed and the journey that you've gone through. When I think of this tip, it makes me reflect on the journey of women that go through being diagnosed with breast cancer and have to go through a series of consulting um, sessions to prepare them for the treatment that they have to embark on, such as, you know, chemotherapy and all other types of cancer treatment that they have to go through. And the journey that they go through that sometimes can be very difficult. It can be sometimes very painful. There's the losing of appetite and the loss of hair and the change of your complexion and just how you feel emotionally about yourself. But what happens is, as a woman goes through that journey to recover from that diagnosis of being found with breast cancer, once that cancer goes into submission, the woman doesn't stop there. But then as she links up with other women and other people in the community of helping women with breast cancer, they begin to have the courage to share their story about how they went through that journey and now that they are now cancer free and their cancer is in remission. And so the same way women can find encouragement through sharing their stories at events, and to go for walks and having a day event of just long walking events and to raise money and to just raise cancer awareness that gives them a platform to share their story. We need to understand as men, as we find purpose from our pain, that we will then, through the grace of God, have a platform that we can share with other men to encourage them that they are not alone. They are not the only person going through this. God has not turned his back on you. And as men, we just have to be willing to get free from the mindset that was taught to us as children by our parents that says, what goes on this house stays in this house. You're familiar with that, right? What goes on in this house stays in this house. And unfortunately, what causes us as men not to share our story with others, male or female, because there can be women who have a husband that's going through. There could be a daughter who has a father that's going through, a mother who has a son that's going through. The reason why they don't receive the encouragement that they need sometimes is because we're holding on to this mindset. What goes on in this house stays in this house. And as a result, we are silently struggling and frustrating, losing a battle on the inside, emotionally and mentally. When God transforms and changes our life, because pain can be transformative. Pain, when I think about the emotional and mental pain that I've been through over the last 5 years since this pandemic, how it's been transformative, where I thought the pressure that I was under was going to cause me to burst and to crack under it, because pressure applied too much can cause pipes to burst. But what I've come to understand through the grace of God, pressure applied properly to coals can produce diamonds. And when you come out on the other side as a diamond, a person of value that people want and desire to have in their life, it's giving you the platform to share your story. Your story is like the diamond that was crafted and formed in that painful process that you went through in life. That painful process of abuse, whether sexual, emotional, or physical. The pain of abandonment. You learn as a man, you thought that the individuals who were your parents, who raised you your entire time, you find out that they are your adopted parents and that your real parents, unfortunately, were not able to step up to the plate of the responsibility of parenthood and chose to allow you to be cared and loved by someone else through adoption because of the pain and the addiction that they were going through. They were not able to be the parents that they were destined to be in your life. And so now you're dealing with the revelation that your father abandoned you or your mother abandoned you. But just because someone is not your parents by birth still does not mean you don't have parents that love you by choice. That's the power of adoption. But the pain and the revelation of it, having to deal with that, so that when it can be a story to encourage other young boys who feel rejected, who feel abandoned. What you're going through right now in the dark room, the negative situations that are being developed are all for the purpose of you being able to share your story and getting free of the mindset of what goes on in this house stays in this house. My next tip is, if you're going to find purpose from your pain, you have to find your cause. What do I mean by that? Finding your cause. If you've never heard of the man John Walsh, who was a person who was very instrumental back in the late 80s and 90s, he was a part of a show called America's Most Wanted. And how this show started was from, unfortunately, the tragic events of his 6-year-old son, Adam Walsh, being abducted and then killed at 6 years old. And from what I've learned of the story through watching YouTube videos, Adam was with his mom's in a Sears department store. And his mom's was, Adam was the type of kid where he was loved, and his parents were very overprotective of him. They were with him every step of the way. But this one moment and occasion at the Sears store, he saw some boys playing video games. Video games at that time began to become popular, like Atari and Nintendo, Donkey Kong. And he was intrigued by that. And so he asked his mom, "Can I sit there and watch the other kids play?" His mom said, "Okay, go ahead. I'm only going to be just 1 or 2 hours away. I can still see you because of head length." And what the detective said, within a 3-minute period, at some point where his mom's had turned her head just for a moment, he was abducted in the Sears store. What was frustrating for them and was difficult for them to understand, that Sears didn't have the type of security and cameras that they should have had so that they could see who the abductor was in abducting their son in the store. And when the police came, the police reaction to all of this was that maybe that the kid just wandered off or ran away from home, instead of seeing it for it was that this kid had been adopted. And so they found, instead of them getting assistance and more people coming to help find this kid, there was no Amber Alert back then. There was no Missing Children's Center. There was none of that. It was just, that was something very foreign in Florida where they were at. And so as a result, 2 weeks later, they found Adam's body and his head severed in this ravine not too far from the home. And so after having to bury their son, people began to send cards and wishes. And the Walsh family had went through the news media, through ABC and NBC and CBS, because that was really the only real television stations in that time. There really wasn't any cable or live streaming. And as people began to send their condolences and prayers, his mom, the wife, she spent the time reading all the cards to respond back, despite how difficult it was. Where John, on the other hand, he was just filled with rage, and he was filled with pain, and he was filled with revenge. And I can certainly understand why. But what he did not come to understand was that not only were they getting these cards of condolences and comfort, because he took matters in his own hands in raising money and getting people to find his son so that they could have closure. People began to write to them and send cards of asking for help to help them find their loved ones that had been missing for years, because they felt like they were not getting help from the authorities. They were not getting help from the police. And through a series of conversations with people who were familiar with all this of, children being abducted or teenagers being missing, he ultimately ended up becoming a part of a cause that changed and revolutionized in helping parents to be reunited with their children and saving them, bringing sexual predators and people who want to abduct and bring harm to our children and our loved one to justice, to bring closure, and ultimately became a part of starting a national syndicated television show called America's Most Wanted, where he teamed with law enforcement and authorities to help better educate them on how to help missing children be recovered or to bring the criminals to justice. John Walsh, in his greatest pain of his son being abducted and killed, found purpose from his pain. He found his cause. You're going through a lot of pain right now. You've been going through it for quite a while now. The news cameras are no longer reporting about the devastation in the fires in California. The news stations are no longer reporting about the hurricanes and severe storms that happened in California. No, the news reporters and television stations are no longer covering about how you've lost your job and you're still going through. I want to encourage you this morning, as you're watching the replay of this episode, that through your pain, you can find not only your purpose, but find your cause. And this is not just true in terms of what happened with John Walsh and the Walsh family, but we see this happen sometimes through mass shootings at schools that happen in Colorado, Columbine, and Florida and Connecticut, where the victims their children that were killed, or the staff member or teachers that were killed, they ultimately becoming a part of a bigger, greater purpose that helps them to find calls to rally against people having, these types of self-destructive guns when they shouldn't have them. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into on gun rights, but definitely a discussion needs to be had. There definitely needs to be changes. But for those discussions to happen and for those changes to take place so that our children can be safer in school, there has to be someone who has a cause to want to see it happen. And maybe you're the person with the pain, whatever your emotional and mental pain struggle you're dealing with, there is purpose and a cause for you. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live, do me a favor, click that like button, click that thumbs up, share this on your favorite social media platform. And if you are new to the Real Men Rising YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, click the alert notification button, and be a part of the conversation of real men that are raising the standard of manhood, not just in their life, but in the generation to come. My final point, as you share your story, as you find your cause from you finding purpose from your pain, it also helps you to be a beacon of hope and encouragement for your community and to advocate and to provide support for others. Was John Walsh and his family looking to have this type of calls to rally to help find missing children and missing young adults and to bring criminals to justice? Was that something he was seeing? No. Before his son had got abducted and killed, he was a hotel developer who had partnership with others who were helping to build new hotels in downtown areas, in particular in Miami, Florida. That's where his focus was. But as the tragic events unfolded and his son being killed and them struggling to try to move the project forward, he began to see his life shift where he needed to take up this cause so that he can provide help to a community that was crying out for support and advocacy. And so your pain could be the platform that helps you do the same. The question that I have for you today is, what's stopping you? What's got you with your hands like this instead of your hands being open? What's got your hands pushed to your chest instead of your hands reaching out to provide community support? And if you say it's your pain, it all goes back to tip number one. You got to acknowledge it. You can't suppress it. You can't tolerate it. You got to acknowledge and deal with it. That's the content this morning here on Man Talk Live. And so if you're watching the replay, I want to challenge you. Normally, I always ask you, give me a hashtag team replay in the comment section. But give me more this morning. Give me this afternoon. Give me more. How are you sharing your story from the pain that you're dealing with? How are you finding your cause from the emotional and mental pain? And if you're a man, you say, I'm good. I'm not going through anything. Okay, good. But you've been through some very painful things in your life. Have you shared your story? How you lost your job? Have you shared your story? How you lost the love of your life? Have you shared your story? How you've had to eulogize your sister? Have you shared your story and found your cause to encourage someone else? Let me know in the comment section. Well, that's the content. And I felt it was so important that we share this episode with the right passion and getting this episode with the right audio and everything that needs content creation to work. And so we had to go live. We had to re-record so that way the replay would be of quality for the replay viewers. So that's the content. We're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. And so leave us your feedback in the comments section. Again, click the thumbs up button for me and share this content, this episode, on your favorite social media platform that you're on the most. We'll see you on the next episode of Man Talk Live. God bless.